Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and I wanted to talk a little bit about shovelware and how to handle it whenever you kind of somehow seem to acquire it into your collection or have it added to your collection. Because I think we all have games that are probably lower dollar, lower tier, maybe not as fun. Perhaps we have some sports games, and I think that these games, while they do serve a place in, in a video game collection, it really just depends on the person, or the collector rather, and what they consider shovelware. But before I dive into that, I just got to circle back to a video that I dropped recently. So I guess I didn't realize two things. One, I didn't realize how much of a dislike people had for Phoenix Resale. I didn't realize it. I put out a video that was basically just talking about how I felt like Phoenix Resale has done a good job of just pivoting business wise, right? Business wise. When you look at the business of flipping video games, I feel like he's done a really great job there. Now, if you're a collector, if you're a gamer, you really don't like him because he doesn't represent the true heart of the gaming community as it comes to as it pertains to playing video games, collecting video games, trading video games, things of that nature. And so I think what a lot of people dislike about him is the pure capitalist mindset that he has towards video games, because it really seems like he has zero connection or zero love for games at all, and it's really primarily about the money. And looking at it within that context and talking about him within the context of business, yes, he's great at that. Is he great in terms of being a video game player or being a part of the gaming community? I leave that up to the public to decide. I really don't look to him when it comes to understanding games or getting the backstory on games, or just really trying to figure out which games are fun, because I know that's not what he's about. If I want to really know a lot about, let's say, a Sega game, I'm going to go look at Sega Lord X's channel. If I want to know about how great a Super Nintendo game is, I'm probably going to hit up SNES Punk's channel, because these are folks that can really take you through the journey of a game, give you the ins and outs, and it's clear that they're at, they understand what gaming is about. They play games, they have a love for them, and they can really give you an in-depth breakdown of the games that they talk about. But I don't look to Phoenix Resale for gaming information, whether it be how good a game is, how bad a game is. That's not his purpose to me on YouTube. His purpose is to primarily show you how to get into the business of reselling video games or reselling things, period. And so if you abhor that, you're going to really dislike him. And I guess I didn't know how strong that hate was. And then I think the second piece of it is there's a strong dislike for his methods and practices when it comes to reselling video games. Now, I haven't watched a ton of his videos. I've watched some of his videos. I've watched a good amount of like his collecting videos when he's gone out like into half price books. In my part of the country, we don't even have that store, so I don't even know what that store is about. But I guess he's in the South somewhere is where he's located, and he probably travels all along maybe the South and the Midwest, which if you live in the South and the Midwest, it's easier to do things, period, because everything just feels cheaper in the South and in the Midwest. Real estate is cheaper, food is cheaper, games are cheaper, right? Just because of the demographic, of the job market, of how much people are getting paid out there. All those things factor in. Be that as it may, after dropping that video, I understood how deep the hatred runs for that guy. I lost subscribers, I got some interesting comments, and again, like him or hate him, I'm not changing my tune. Like him or hate him, he understands the business, and he very much embraces the capitalistic mindset, right? Capitalism is what I was talking about. If you understand capitalism, now not everybody agrees with capitalism, not everybody believes in capitalism, but if you understand capitalism, you will understand that he is taking full advantage of the capitalistic nature of business when it comes to how we do business here, at least in this country and probably all over the world. So there's no morals in capitalism. There's no feelings in capitalism. It really boils down to the bottom line, dollars and cents, right? And someone left a comment in there that you can't knock the hustle. You really can't knock the hustle because there are a lot of businesses, companies that do some of the most unethical things to achieve the highest level of profit. And if you knew what all of those companies did, you'd probably not use a lot of products and you'd probably avoid a lot of restaurants and retail stores. But that's a whole nother thing to dive into, and I'm not going to dive into that. What I will say is that I guess I didn't know how strong the hatred was, and I think it's just interesting to see here. But getting back to the point of this video, and I guess it all kind of relates, shovelware, right? Shovelware to me are the games that either you don't find interesting and somehow they wind up in your collection because maybe you bought a collection off of someone else, or maybe even you went to a local thrift store or you know, flea market or whatever the case may be, and you picked up a bunch of games, and those games probably aren't the most valuable, they aren't the most expensive, and they don't have a ton of resale value, right? Now, there are games that I have in my collection that are not very expensive and are probably what some folks would consider shovelware, but to me, they are great games that I have because they hold sentimental value. I played them as a kid. I watched my brothers play them, and so I keep them in my collection. An example of that, Final Fight. Final Fight is a super common game. This game goes for anywhere from $5 to $12. This is a super cheap game, but this is a classic beat 'em up game, especially on the Super Nintendo. I know there's so many versions of this game across a wide number of systems, including handhelds, but Final Fight on the Super Nintendo, this cover art exactly, where you got Hagar staring at one of the main villains in the game, this is iconic. And I remember seeing this. I remember looking at the rolls on Hagar's neck as a kid and thinking, man, this guy's got neck muscle. And so this is a game that I don't think I could ever, truly remove from my collection just because of the sentimental value, what it means to me. And I know I can play it on a number of systems. I actually had Final Fight CD for the Sega CD, but I sold that to keep this version because this is the version I remember playing as a kid. So Final Fight, while it may not mean a lot to someone who's just purely collecting and reselling, like this may not be a game that Caleb would pick up if he saw it for a certain price. But this is a game that for me, I would add to my collection because it's sick. It's an amazing beat 'em up. To me, it's right up there with games like Streets of Rage and Streets of Rage 2. So this is a classic. This is iconic and it has to stay in the collection. Another game that folks might consider shovelware, Super Mario Land, which to me is probably one of the best games in my collection. Why? Because this is the very first video game I ever got as a kid. This is the very first video game that I I don't want to say this is the first game I ever played because I did play Sega with my brothers. But in terms of video games that I owned as a child, this is the first video game I ever owned. And so Super Mario Land, while it may, again, folks might see this at a flea market or at a thrift store and they might say, I'm going to pass on that shovelware. No, if I see this brings a ton of memories just flooding back to my mind. And so this one has to become a staple in my collection just because of what it means to me and the impact that it had. I mean, I played this game sun up till sundown. I beat this game over and over and over again. Before I even knew what a speed run was, I used to try to do speed runs in this game just to see how fast I could beat it. And I remember I used to waste batteries. And for those of you who grew up playing the original Game Boy, you know what I'm talking about. I remember I used to waste battery life because I would pause the game for hours. If I couldn't beat a level right away, there wasn't really any save features in a lot of these games. And like when it came to Super Nintendo games, you could just pause the game and leave the Super Nintendo on and turn the TV off and walk away because there was like unlimited battery because it was plugged into the wall. But in Game Boy, you know, you could only do that for so long before your batteries drained. And I remember I used to waste batteries keeping this game paused. Like I would wake up, play it, pause it, and then come back to it after school, hoping the batteries didn't die so I could beat it in one day. Just stuff like that, man. Memories like that make this iconic to me. And you have other games that you might see at like a GameStop that you might consider shovelware, like Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, this one is in my collection because this is a pretty cool game. I wanted to keep this in my collection. Same thing with Transformers, Dark of the Moon. I'm a big fan of the Transformers movie. I actually have another Transformers game on the 360. So games like these, if I see them at GameStop, I do pick them up because I do like these type of action adventure games added to my 360 collection, and I'll keep those there. Or even a game like Wolfchild. This is a game that came out on both the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, and this is a pretty cool like Metroidvania style action platformer with some interesting gaming elements. I think once you it's like a combination of Altered Beast and like I don't even know what else to compare it to, but it's a pretty cool game, and it's not common, but it's not expensive either. So this is one that I would keep. And then just another one. I remember playing Cold Shadow, but I had Cold Shadow on the PC. And when I discovered that they had it available on the Super Nintendo, I had to get it just because of one, I think this label's super cool. In terms of a Disney label, look at that. I love those colors. You got Donald Duck looking all gnarly in that. So this is one that I added to the collection and I'm keeping just because I played this on PC as a kid and I wanted to keep it in the collection. Cold Shadow's sick. If you've never played this game, check it out. But then you have games that are truly shovelware to me that don't belong in my collection. Like, for instance, this copy of Gran Turismo 3. Now, I got this copy of Gran Turismo 3 when I picked up a fat PlayStation 2 from a local thrift store. I didn't realize the game was in there, but then when I popped it open and took the game out, I said, hey, I got a copy of Gran Turismo 3. Now, I'm not super into racing games. I'm not a racing game fan. I don't play them a lot. But this is shovelware. And this is something that I would probably want to remove from my collection. And I'll talk about how I go about getting rid of that. We got another game here, which clearly sold at a thrift store for probably about $1.25, because I think this is usually the 50% off sticker. But this is a game that sold for $1.25. It's a newer game, right? It came out on Xbox One. It's not super old. And it isn't actually, it's an interesting game. If I'm not mistaken, this was like a highly played game for a while. So it's not that it's a bad game. It's just super common. It's super available and it's super abundant. So is it one that people are going to, jump through hoops to get? Probably not. But it is considered shovelware. And then you have a game like Gauntlet Legends, which on the N64, this probably would fall into the shovelware territory because it's not a super high-end one like Mystical Ninja or, Castlevania, or it's not like Smash Bros. It is a pretty fun action-adventure kind of RPG style game, but it's not something that a lot of people, I think, are checking for. And so where do these games go to perish? What's the last stop for these games? I think there's two places these games wind up in. The first place that they wind up in is at a yard sale or a thrift store or a place like that. And it's usually there because people have probably already picked through the stuff that they actually want and they left games like these behind. And then the other place that they land is just in someone's collection, right? I do not think that there is a resale market for shovelware unless you bundle it all together and sell it in like a big bundle. And even at that, when you do that, you'd probably be selling it at a loss because the cheapest place that you're going to be able to find games like this at are going to be your local pawn and thrift shops and your yard sales and things like that. Or if you happen to buy games like this in a lot. Now, I see a lot of video game hunting videos, and I will talk about how video game hunting is kind of dying off, because there was a time where you could find better games, more quality games, not necessarily more expensive games, but there usually is a correlation between quality and price. But the days of finding like a Super Metroid at a yard sale for $5 is gone, because Super Metroid is one of the best games ever on the Super Nintendo. It's a quality game, and the price reflects that. I think at one point Super Metroid was going for like $70. I don't know where it's at now. I know it's shot up there for a while. It may have come back down, but you're not seeing stuff like that. And so for those who are probably trying to hit up the thrift sales and the yard sales thinking that they can flip through this method and flip games, I just think it's a waste of time, because when you combine what you're paying for the game with the sweat equity, the gas, the mileage, the wear and tear on your body, on your car, going out and sourcing it, there's really zero profit. It's almost negative profit. At best, you'll break even. My thing is I think the best thing for collectors, if you're a collector and you want to build a collection, games like this, games that fall into this category, are a great place to start, because you could build a solid collection of really quality games. Maybe not the most expensive games, but you can build a collection of quality games at a decent price, not breaking the bank. And the best part is that you don't have to fight anyone to get it. You don't have to be the first in line to get it. You don't have to hang outside the game store or the pawn store or the thrift shop to pick it up, because these are games that in 2024, I don't think people are looking for. They're either trying to get rid of these games, sell these games, bundle them up in lots and get rid of them. And the only people that I think really want these are the folks who are collecting these games or trying to add them into their collection. So you will have competition from the collectors, but you won't have as much competition from the resellers. And I think when it comes to collectors, the mindset in sourcing games is different from a reseller. Resellers are like hound dogs. They want to chase it down. They want to sniff it out. They want to be the first in line. They want to cut you off in line. They want to do all that nonsense. But in terms of being a collector, now is a great time to pick that stuff up. Me, at this stage of the game, I wanted to spend much of 2023 refining my collection. So the shovelware that I do have in my collection is shovelware that I actually want to keep. And I didn't even show you any of the stuff in my Wii collection, because I do have some shovelware there. But the lower dollar games that are in my collection are the ones that I have because I want them. I want to have them. I want to keep them. They're not games that I'm trying to look to flip or resell. My advice to anyone who's trying to, start a collection, build a collection, go to the shovelware. Look at some of the shovelware games. Look at the lower dollar games, but try to find the ones that are quality. I'm not saying go out there and buy a bunch of Madden 97s all day or NBA Lives. No, don't do that. But like I said, you can find a quality beat 'em up game on the Super Nintendo for $15, and you'll have a blast playing this game over and over again. Let me know what you think of these thoughts. Let me know what you think about collecting and shovelware. Am I completely off here with some of these thoughts? I'm the Y2K Collector. Hopefully you're having a good week. I'll see you tomorrow.